Hey, Masters of the Universe and toy fans, welcome back to the Spectra Creative Channel. I'm Scott ToyGuru Neitlich. I was the brand manager for Masters of the Universe for about 10 years, which makes it about, like 25% of the brand's total life. And in that time, I've picked up quite a lot of knowledge about the brand. And in today's video, we're going to tackle a subject that is both confusing and confusing. Who owns the rights to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, or just Masters of the Universe, or She-Ra, Princess of Power, or however you want to define the brand? The rights to this brand are, for lack of a better word, headache-producing. It is a twisted, convoluted schematic of companies buying companies, selling off IP, selling off brand rights, selling off parts of brand rights. Needless to say, sometimes I could even be completely wrong on this, but I'm going to try to put the pieces together the best that I can with the best information I have, knowing that I haven't been at Mattel in over 5 years and things may have changed. All right, so for starters, it's a mess. Let's just start it right there, and no ifs, ands, or buts. There's absolutely no way to define the ownership of the Masters of the Universe brand without first admitting that it is a confusing pile of bleep. All right, so let's jump in. If you Google who owns Masters of the Universe, it will say that it's owned by Mattel. But Google may also be confusing this with who created Masters of the Universe. And Google's definitely not right here, and that is absolutely factual. While Mattel has definitely had its fair share of lawsuits over the years with different people, the ownership of the brand and the idea that it's in question, well, that goes back to intellectual property and how intellectual property works. And this is all information out there in the public domain. I'm not giving away anything proprietary. So to understand how intellectual property works, it's important to understand that it can be divided up into categories. You can have intellectual property that's entertainment and intellectual property that's physical objects, and sometimes they can intermix or be separated. So I don't think anyone is doubting that Mattel created the Masters of the Universe brand in the early 1980s, and it's all started off with toys and mini-comics, eventually branching out to TV. Now, if you want to know who physically created He-Man, there's a great video on my channel where I cover that in detail. But for now, let's just all agree that the Masters of the Universe brand was created at Mattel by Mattel employees, and then eventually Filmation came along and made entertainment and had some of the entertainment rights to the property as part of the deal, and had basically carte blanche to do a lot of what they wanted. Mattel didn't have as much control in the Filmation series as later IP deals had later on with other companies. Kind of non-traditional, if you will, where the Filmation studio had way more control. Mattel still had control of the action figures, and the action figure category was something that remained at Mattel, and it continued to make even to this day, this video being recorded in August of 2020. Well, it's almost September. It's the last day of August. All right, so now let's go through the ownership. So Mattel sells the entertainment rights to Masters of the Universe to Hallmark. Hallmark then sells the rights to Entertainment Rights, which sells the rights to Classic Media. The live action rights are currently with Sony. So Sony as a studio has just the live action rights, similar to the way they have rights to Spider-Man. Now the original live action movie with Dolph Lundgren, directed by Goddard, that is owned by Warner Brothers, which is the studio that bought Canon, which is the production studio that originally made the Gary Goddard film. So that's a whole other thing altogether and not related to Sony's current live action rights. But the original is under Warner Brothers. All right, so where are we now? It's obviously that the rights have passed along to multiple companies, but we are not done yet. So Classic Media, which is the owner of the rights, and actually during the time that Classics is coming out, is the time period when Classic Media owns the entertainment rights to the brand? Well, for those of you who collected the Masters of the Universe Classics figures, you can easily look at any of them and turn them over and see TM and copyright Mattel on the bottom of the box. And yes, that's true. The toy is TM and copyright to Mattel, but every single Classics action figure that we made, Mattel paid a royalty to Classic Media because Classic Media had the rights to the property, which all started with Mattel selling the rights to Hallmark, which then went to entertainment rights, and then to Classic Media. So even though all of the toys are copyrighted to Mattel, we're still paying Classic Media, and now Classic Media is owned by DreamWorks. DreamWorks comes along and buys Classic Media, so now DreamWorks is the IP owner to Masters of the Universe. But wait, we're not done yet. So if you look at things like the Dark Horse coffee table books that came out during this period when DreamWorks acquired Classic Media, you will clearly see a giant DreamWorks logo on the back. Now, DreamWorks was then acquired by Universal. So Universal, by buying DreamWorks, which had ownership of the Classic Media catalog, they are now the de facto owners of the Masters of the Universe brand, at least the entertainment rights. Mattel, because of a clause in the contract, maintained first rights to toys. So Mattel can continue to produce action figures based on, or any toy category really, based on Masters of the Universe. They have first right to pass. If they pass on doing a certain category, Universal could take that to another toy company, but they have to come to Mattel first. But the end is nigh, because this only goes through 2023, when all rights revert to the IP holder, which is now Universal. Whew, yeah, I know. As I said in the beginning, this was going to be a bit of a confusing video with lots of company names, but in the conclusion, or at least at the conclusion of all of this bouncing around of IP and companies buying companies, well, even Universal now has a partnership with Hasbro, with even rumors of Universal and Hasbro connecting. And if that should happen, that means Universal could go to Hasbro starting in 2023 to make Masters of the Universe toys. How weird would that be? Is anyone else out of breath? I'm definitely out of breath at this point. Yeah, I know. It's a lot to take in. And it's definitely not a straight line or a easy to understand flowchart in any sense of the word. So while we all agree that Masters of the Universe was created at Mattel back in the early 80s by a group of amazing toy makers who put a lot of love into it, Universal, through acquisition of DreamWorks, is now the de facto owner, at least of the entertainment rights to Masters of the Universe, except for live action. Live action is with Sony. So to recap, Universal bought DreamWorks, and through the acquisition of buying DreamWorks, acquired the entire catalog of Classic Media. Sony has the live action rights, at least until I think they stop trying to make a movie. Once they stop, those rights revert as well to Universal. Mattel continues to have the toy rights until 2023, in which they will then revert to Universal, and Universal can do whatever they want with the toy and the entertainment rights. But until then, Mattel can still put TM and copyright Mattel on all of their toy product, even though they're paying a royalty to Universal. At least I assume they are. Now this is a picture of a horse wearing a diaper. It's just as confusing as the ownership of Masters of the Universe. I know that we paid Classic Media royalty. I have to assume that Mattel is now paying Universal the same exact royalty, since Universal now owns the Classic Media library through their acquisition of DreamWorks. And again, Classic Media getting that from entertainment rights and then Hallmark. Anything could change at any moment. Of course, I could be totally wrong in any of this. I have not worked for Mattel for many years, but I did trace a lot of this at Mattel, and I actually had legal coming to me as the expert a lot of times because I was one of the only people who tried to understand it. And yes, it gives even me a headache because it's crazy. and it's a beloved brand. Who knows what will happen in the future? If you like this video, if you're confused by anything still, let me know. Give it a like. I would most appreciate that. That helps the YouTube algorithm, as does a subscription, and helps get these videos out to more people. Let me know if I missed anything or you want any more clarification in the comments below, and I'll see you guys around the toy aisles.